Peter Felix started his career at IBM and then, after an MBA at INSEAD, became European Head of Personnel for the Bendix Corporation in Paris. He later became a headhunter and is now president of the Association of Executive Search Consultants. Not long into your post-INSEAD career, in 1973, Peter, the oil crisis struck. How did that affect you?
Well, the first thing you have to do in your business career is get fired. So I did that. I got laid off, as many of our contingent or that age group did. We were affected by the energy crisis that came along, and bang, a lot of us were laid off. And because I was head of personnel, I had to actually fire everybody else. And then I had the unusual experience of signing my own redundancy papers. So I was prepared for the experience. It was a very tough time, actually. People weren't recruiting. Except some of the management consulting firms were recruiting for people to go to the newly wealthy Middle Eastern and Northern African countries. So I came to the realization that this may be what I should do. So I went to a French-speaking country, Algeria, and I spent almost 2 years there in a form of management consulting, management training role for Sonatrach, the national oil and gas industry. And again, that was a transition. At the time, I didn't know where it was leading me, but it fitted with this development of a kind of human capital, human resource portfolio.
And then you became a headhunter. How did that come about?
Yes, that was again more by force of circumstance. It happens quite often to people who fall into executive search once they've had some kind of business or consulting experience. It's not at all unusual. In fact, it's very common that people in their 30s and even 40s will decide that they would enjoy consulting at the senior level, which is what executive search is all about, and they enjoy the human capital side of organizations. And so people come in from all kinds of industries and backgrounds. As it happened, the consulting firm I was working with had just begun a small executive search operation, and so I was the second person into it. I became a partner and stayed in search for the next 25 years, I think.
Executive search seems like something that's quite open for people coming in, but what kind of people thrive and do best in the industry?
Well, I think you've got to enjoy, obviously, a service kind of mentality. I mean, you've got to be a kind of service person, helping to solve a problem for a client. You've got to be interested in people, otherwise it's going to be a pretty boring and unrewarding experience. And I think you've got to be something of a matchmaker. You can see connections between people. And I think that probably comes naturally in other forms of your life, other parts of your life. You like connecting people. I think you have to have something of a social demeanor. If you're someone who enjoys being in the lab or doing backroom work, you're not really going to enjoy executive search, because you really have to be out there talking to people, communicating, and presenting an opportunity for career advancement. But you've got to be fairly astute at consulting the client as to what the best match will be.
If you look at where there is most growth in the world, China, India, Brazil, these aren't places where executive search is that common. Do you think they're starting to get the idea?
Not to the same extent. But of course, they haven't had many years of a free enterprise and free mobile labor market. The Western countries have, particularly the United States, particularly the UK, increasingly in other parts of Europe. Although some parts of Europe are still, very much the old approach, so to speak, of connections and so on. But once you open up a market, an executive market, it becomes very competitive very quickly. And that's what we're seeing in China, we're seeing it in India, we're seeing it in Latin America. So attitudes are changing pretty rapidly, particularly in markets like China and India, where the potential is huge. I mean, obviously, it goes without saying. But there's got to be cultural change, there's got to be embracing of a more Western approach, if you like, to recruiting. And I think we'll see major changes. It took McKinsey 10 years to get the Chinese to deal on the basis of their normal terms and conditions. They said, sorry, that's the way we do it. And it's paid off. And I think the same will be true of executive search.
One frustration people have with headhunters is that they only seem to consider very obvious candidates. Is there a way you can get on the shortlist if you don't tick all the boxes?
I think that is quite difficult because clients are very often very narrow-minded. We used to take the view that at least 3 out of the 5 candidates must fit the spec precisely. Square peg for square hole. You're not going to get paid otherwise, and probably 4. And sometimes the client will say, I don't want to see anybody else. It's all very nice, you coming with a left field candidate, not interested. And that has been particularly true in the last 5 or 6 years in the financial crisis because of the mindset of the client. There's so many people out of work, why would we, broaden the spec? But hopefully the client will be a bit more broad-minded, and hopefully the search consultant will be a bit more creative so that the person who doesn't have exactly the right qualifications and experience could be a candidate.
Are there things people shouldn't do? Are there things people should avoid when talking to headhunters?
Well, there's a whole bunch of those. First of all, don't send out a mass of resumes entitled "Dear Sir." You're an agricultural economist and you're sending it to someone who specializes in financial services. Not going to be a great use of anyone's time. Don't keep calling, but if you have a rapport with a search consultant and they've said, happy to keep in touch, don't force the relationship, but keep in touch, from time to time. Update them on what you're doing. It's a personal relationship-based service. And the other thing, the way to build trust with a search consultant is be open and frank, but help. And sometimes I get asked by or told by executives, well, I'm happy to give you a referral if you give me a commission. And I say, I don't think you understand executive search at all. We're in the recruiting business, you're not. And the way we operate is very different. And you're investing in your network if you are prepared to be open and help and talk. If not, well, fine. But you've just actually cut off what could be a productive relationship by taking that very commercial and rather narrow-minded approach. Top people are always happy to help. And that's what we've always found is that the higher you go in organizations, the more they understand the issues of helping talent to reach the next level.